This video is going to be my midterm review of the Niner Air 9 RDO. This follows my first look video where I really showed the bike up close. Now, just as a preface, I am a full suspension guy. I have a Niner RKT 9 RDO, and when I talk about how this bike rides, I'll do a little bit of comparison with a full suspension, but I want to kind of keep that separate from this video. That's a whole separate one that I'm making. In fact, I'm in the process of making a video where I do a time trial test between these bikes. Before I talk about the overall ride characteristics of the bike, let me talk about some of the components and how they perform, starting with the seat posts. So this is a carbon seat post. This is Niner's RDO seat post, and this has a little bit of flex to it, and it does work. Now, I think that heavier riders are going to get more flex out of the seat post, but even someone who's fairly on the light side like me can feel the seat post flexing underneath, and it definitely takes the edge off the bumps when you're sitting in the saddle as you ride. Shifting and braking performance from the SRAM group is absolutely flawless on this bike. The brakes have really good modulation and excellent power. Like I said in the first look video, it has a 180 front rotor and a 160 rear, and I've had absolutely no issues with power on this bike. You don't get the on-off feel that brakes with less modulation have. So the brakes on this are phenomenal. The shifting has been spot on. I don't think I've even had a misshift. The SRAM Eagle component group, whether it's XO, GX, or X1, XX1 I should say, really shifts crisply, precisely. It's not hard to find the right gear. It's just a real positive click. So no issues at all with the SRAM components. And like I said, all the build kits come with SRAM. So the performance from different SRAM Eagle group is about the same. The higher end just has lower weight. Although in the past I have not been a fan of flat bars, this bar has really grown on me. It's a 780 wide bar. And I thought I might want to cut this down if this were my own bike, but I think after riding this, I would leave it at 780, even for cross country. Now the stem, it's a good stem, but I would go with a little bit shorter stem. It's a 90. I personally would run a 70, and even after riding this for 3 weeks, I'm going to stick with that. I like shorter stems, but the bar width is good, and this bar is super stiff. It's a comfortable bar. It doesn't have a lot of vibration that comes through the bar, but it's also very stiff, which is important for a wide bar. The wider you get, the more important stiffness is, and having a carbon bar really enhances the stiffness. The Fox Stepcast fork on this bike is absolutely buttery smooth. Now, Stepcast is not the stiffest fork in the world, but I honestly don't really notice the flex on this bike. You know, like I said, I'm pretty light, so I'm not going to flex components as much as someone who's heavier, but the fork has been flawless. It does have a lockout, but I actually really don't use the lockout that much on the trail. I'll use it when I jump on a pavement section or on a dirt road, but as far as trail riding, I generally will just leave it in the unlocked position. This is my first time testing the Maxxis Icon tires, and I really like them. They remind me a lot of my Vittoria Mezcal tires, which have a rounder profile. So tires that have more of a square profile will have kind of an on-off feel as you corner. These transition really smoothly into the corners, and even though the knobs are not very high, they still hook up very well in the corners, and they actually surprise me of how well they hook up. So this is an excellent choice for this bike, excellent cross-country tire. The last component that I'll talk about is the Stans Arch wheels. So the wheels feel good. I personally like running aluminum wheels on a hardtail. It softens up the ride a little bit. I love the Stans Valors that I have on my RKT 9, but that's a full suspension. So the Valors, though, have some pretty good give to them. So I really would be interested in testing the Valors on this bike. However, I cannot because this is a SRAM XD drive hub, whereas my Valors are the Shimano hub. So until the bike industry grows up and figures out how they want to come up with a standard for rear hubs and rear axles, it makes it a little difficult for testing out different wheels. But the arches, they feel pretty stiff. They're not as light as my Valors, so I don't really feel the weight of these compared to the Valors. It's a smooth riding rim, and like I said, still pretty stiff. Now let's talk about the ride quality of this bike. Some mountain bikes are very stable, but they're not very agile. Then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got some mountain bikes that are really agile, but once you get them up to speed, they're not stable and they can feel twitchy. The Air 9 RDO really combines stability and agility extremely well in one package. I feel like I can flow really well through single track, pushing hard through the corners, and then it's really easy just to throw this bike around. I mean, it's a hardtail, so it's going to be fast because it's got short chainstays, it's light, but you feel like you can just throw this bike hard into corners, but it remains very stable. And I think part of that is the way the front end feels. The front end of this bike just feels like you can push it really aggressively into a corner and it's going to handle it. It doesn't flex very much. It holds a line really well. So it's a bike that, even though it's a hardtail, I feel like you can ride pretty aggressively on this bike and still be stable. And of course, being a lightweight carbon hardtail, the bike climbs like there's no tomorrow. And when you get out of the saddle and sprint hard on this bike, you know, whether it's just a straight line sprint or up a climb, it just responds. You know, my full suspension RKT9 is very fast, but you know, being a hardtail, it just takes it to a whole new level as far as out of the saddle efforts. Now, do I miss full suspension on rocky and rooty climbs? I actually do. With the hardtail, I really have to focus on getting my weight out of the saddle, and going up climbs that, like I said, are rooty or rocky, you do have to kind of focus on shifting your weight around so you don't slide out. You still can hit a bump hard on a climb and kind of jars you a little bit. So even up a climb, when you're not going that fast, you still have to shift your weight around. Now, like I said, I've been riding full suspension for quite a while, and I'm not gonna lie, it's taken some adjustment to get used to a hardtail. In fact, the first time I got out on this bike, I got bucked around a lot. I had to adjust my riding style a little bit, put my weight a little bit more forward, put less weight on the saddle, especially going over bumpy terrain. But the more I rode this bike, the more it grew on me, the more I got used to that type of riding. And then of course, being able to enjoy the acceleration and lightweight feel of a hardtail has been really nice. This is a very smooth riding hardtail. Of course, you've got the carbon frame and the carbon seat post that flexes a little bit. You've got 29-inch wheels with decent tire volume. All of that adds up to a bike that honestly feels really smooth for a hardtail. And I've actually enjoyed the kind of feeling of the bike moving around a little bit more underneath me than I would on a full suspension. Kind of feeling it bounce a little bit on the ground, because even though it is bouncing on the ground, the bumps aren't extremely jarring because of how smooth the bike rides. So that'll conclude my midterm review of the Niner Air 9 RDO. I will follow up this video very soon with comparing some lap times of this racing hardtail versus a racing full suspension, which of course is my RKT9 RDO. As always, questions, comments that you have about the bike or this video, drop those below. Thanks for watching.